Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Fiber Broadband Association's Fiber for Breakfast. We're now in our 16th episode of 2022. Before we kick off, I'd like to thank the sponsors of Fiber for Breakfast, including our gold sponsors, CHR Solutions, Millennium, and Plume, and our silver sponsor, Graybar. We are now 26 days away from NTI issuing the $42.45 billion BEAD NOFA, the Notice of Funding Opportunity. This week, the Fiber Broadband Association is sending a letter to House Energy and Commerce Committee highlighting the latest facts and stats on all fiber deployment in the U.S. The committee has been very vocal in encouraging NTI to prioritize fiber, but they're taking some fire from the wireless and cable industry. Yesterday, we held our Regional Fiber Connect workshop in Providence, Rhode Island, and we had a great turnout. It was wonderful to hear from local leaders such as the Lieutenant Governor Matos, Daniela Fairchild, who's acts as the State Broadband Director, Michael Lynch, the broadband guy over at the City of Boston, and a special thank you for an engaging and passionate closing keynote from State Representative Deb Ruggiero. We had a number of great panels and discussions. What a fantastic event. Our next big event will be in Nashville from June 12th to 15th for Fiber Connect 2022. Our annual conference is shaping up to be the top event in the industry this year, with over 200 speakers and over 170 sessions. It's going to be absolutely amazing. So if you haven't registered, you need to do so really quick, because we are going to sell out much quicker than we did last year. After Nashville, we'll be heading up to Nate's area to Copper Mountain Resort in Colorado on August 23rd, and then we're in Columbus, Ohio on November 3rd. I don't know what's going on in Columbus, but we're getting a lot of interest in that event, so I think they're excited about broadband in Ohio. So we're going to see you there. But speaking of Colorado, today's Fiber for Breakfast session, we're going to focus on an initiative to create an open access middle mile transport network to support the unserved and underserved communities in Northwest and Western Colorado. This morning we'll be discussing Western Colorado Elevate Broadband. But before I introduce today's guest, I'd like to introduce Trish Ehlers from our team, who's going to walk us through some housekeeping items.
Thanks, Gary, and good morning to everyone who's joined us today. Before I go over a few logistical items, I'd just like to thank our Fiber for Breakfast sponsors once again, our gold sponsors, CHR Solutions, Millennium, and Plume, and our silver sponsor, Graybar. Now, if everyone would just keep in mind that you're all in listen mode only this morning. To ask a question, you can just type it into the question box located within the control panel on the right side of your screen. Gary will host a Q&A session with our panelists at the end of today's session. This presentation is being recorded and will be available to members only on FBA's website within 24 hours. You can find the recording in the Events tab under the Fiber for Breakfast drop-down option. At the conclusion of the presentation, you'll be prompted to complete a very brief feedback survey. If you'd all take a minute to do that, we would really appreciate it. I'll pass it back to Gary now to introduce our panelists and get us started. Gary?
Thanks, Trish, and good morning. I'm Gary Bolton, the President and CEO of the Fiber Broadband Association. Last week at Fiber for Breakfast, we spoke with Stephen Brandy, the General Manager of Ozarks Go, on the role of rural broadband for Ozarks Go. Stephen shared with us an electric utility success in connecting Arkansas and the Ozarks area with fiber broadband. This morning, we had the pleasure to speak with Nate Walowitz, the Regional Broadband Program Director for Northwest Colorado Council of Governments, on Western Colorado's region Elevates Broadband. Nate will share with us their plans to leverage the additional grant funding they received from the state to invest in the middle mile, and how this investment will elevate the region's ability to support last mile providers' goals to deliver fiber broadband to more unserved and underserved rural communities. Nate Walowitz is an innovative telecommunications and technology program executive and serves as a Regional Broadband Program Director for the Northwest Colorado Council of Governments, the NWCCOG. I think that's a 6-letter acronym. Since 2014, his technical advisory services to local governments have led to deployments of broadband to underserved and unserved areas, bringing over $37 million in matching grants to Northwest Colorado community broadband projects. Most recently, the NWCCOG was previously awarded $1 million matching grant to build an open access, resilient middle mile network across 10 counties in Northwest Colorado. This funding has been supplemented by an additional $5.5 million in state grant funding to continue this extension to interconnect 2 existing publicly owned open access middle mile transport networks for the benefit of many Colorado communities west of Denver. You know, prior to the NWCCOG, Matt spent years consulting to industry and governments, providing innovative business solutions in IT, wireless deployments, terrestrial networks, and applications, including developing public safety communication solutions and standards. He has started his career in telecommunications with world-class corporations, including Avant-Garde Computing, Southwestern Bell, and Wildfire Communications. With all that, welcome, Nate. And for our audience, please type in your questions as we go, and we'll discuss those during the Q&A session. So with that, I'll turn it over to Nate.
Thanks, Gary. Good morning to you, and good morning, everyone. Great to be here and talk to you a little bit about some of the solutions that we're applying in Colorado to help solve our broadband connectivity problems. How we got here: multiple outages across the region, single fiber cuts taking down dozens of communities at the same time just because of the architecture of the network of legacy providers. Of course, it impacts government, schools, businesses, public safety. One of the best stories in our region is back in 2012. One of our counties got interested in broadband because ranchers started to call their county commissioners because there was a fiber cut and they could not trade cattle. So from rural to ski towns to mining to just farming, everybody needs broadband. And it became very clear very quickly that we needed to find some way to bridge the digital divide here west of Denver. Next slide, please, Trish. Know some of these realities, and we actually got started. Some of our communities started doing some wireless to the home initiatives in 2005 to 2009. In 2012, we joined together as a region under the Northwest COG because it was brought to our board from county commissioners and town professionals that they really needed help figuring out how we solve broadband problems. In Colorado, probably not much different than some of your communities. Each community is unique, and we each have unique needs. Some need fiber. Some communities are spread out over 40 square miles, 50 square miles, where there's more cattle and elk than population in the community. So kind of a unique set of interests and a unique set of needs. And we discovered that not only local broadband solutions were needed, but we needed a regional solution to help resolve our common problems and to help deliver broadband for last mile ISPs to come in and fix our problems in our communities. Next slide, please. So our program is middle mile focused with support for local communities. We also support last mile ISPs, whether the ISP be a community or the ISP being a not-for-profit, a rural electric co-op, or just a public small company that wants to make a difference. We tailor our local solutions. And of course, the goal for all of us who are on this webinar today is to close the broadband gap in more communities. Next slide, please. So we created Project Thor. By the way, Thor stands for nothing I just like the imagery of Thor wielding his hammer, pounding out a solution and being the defender of the small community and the small folks in our communities. So it was a working name when we started, just kind of stuck. So our network, our open access middle mile network, and all we are is transport. We have other providers come in and provide actual internet access, and DIA is 9 counties. We currently provide service to 16 towns and cities. We serve local ISPs. Over the past 3 years of operation, we've seen an increase in traffic as more and more people jump on our network because we are resilient. You'll note that the network design is a bit of a loop, and what we've done is we've created a number of concentric loops so that even places like Aspen and Breckenridge and Walden and Rangeley that are the very end of anybody's telecom fiber networks have a resilient connection. And so if one connection drops, we can pick back up and no one ever knows the difference. We continue to fine tune this as we go on, and our network covers 17,121 square miles. We serve almost 250,000 people with our network. And the density for our population density is kind of low. We're taking this program and merging our network with another network, next slide please, which is the Region 10 network. Region 10, for those of you who aren't familiar with Colorado, is on the very, very western edge. Most of these counties actually border on the state of Utah. So pretty far out there. Region 10 has their own fiber network. They cover 6 counties, touch 18 communities, and have 600 miles of fiber. They are not as resilient as we are. We're going to help them pick that up. And currently, it's challenging for them to get to Denver and get affordable broadband into their community. So by expanding our networks, just first glance at the project, we're gonna connect together the 2 networks and really make a difference throughout the entire state of Colorado. Next slide, please. Statewide perspective, Colorado in the 2020 census, there are now 5.8 million people here. When I moved to Colorado 16 and a half years ago, we only had 2.5 million people. So the population of the entire state is increasing, and it's not just the Denver metro area. So, so we have an awful lot of territory to cover and an awful lot of folks to serve. Next slide, please. And sorry for the fuzzy graphic. So Project Thor and Region 10 together, more access in more places. We've broken the lock for local communities and help local communities get services that are flexible and dynamic so that the network can grow with their needs. So as their bandwidth requirements increase and their community demand and access requirements increase, they're not just tied to legacy carrier contracts and the limitations that they can provide. And by the way, I will note the legacy carriers are also our partners because we do buy some fat pipe 100 gig connections from them to help us get to some of these communities as well, because there's not fiber everywhere or publicly owned accessible fiber everywhere in our region. We've cut our bandwidth costs from $1.10 to under 25 cents a meg. The resilience helps reduce outages. And again, we do support multiple small last mile providers and even medium-sized last mile providers to help get broadband to more people and push that last mile further out. Next slide, please. So here's a great eye chart. This is what we're looking to do. As you can see, the entire western half of Colorado, as we interconnect our publicly owned networks, and as we make more agreements with others, will not only link the the folks on the Front Range to everyone out in our West Slope, Western communities, and we'll create multiple fiber loops across the state. And we've been helped in this effort by public funding from the State of Colorado Department of Local Affairs in doing this. And we're also going to help educational institutions on the Front Range, University of Colorado, Colorado State University, some other large institutions, link with our university system and college system out on the western slope of Colorado to help upgrade the educational experience and accessibility to higher education, that so folks don't necessarily have to leave their communities to be able to access these programs in higher education as we move on. Next slide, please. So what makes Colorado unique from some other places is we have multiple levels of funding that are available for us as public entities and also for ISPs. The Department of Local Affairs has a 50-50 grant match program. That's what we use to build Project Thor and the Region 10 network. Obviously, the ARPA CPF funds are coming available, and the Colorado Broadband Office, which has been extraordinarily supportive of all of these efforts, has helped bring a lot of policy and a lot of legislative initiatives and funding initiatives to our communities. The IIJA funds, we're looking forward to those. BEAD funds, CAF funds, RDOF, Reconnect, USDA funds. All of our providers are trying to tap into as much funding as possible because these are smaller communities that don't necessarily have a lot of embedded capital in their community to be able to do this. And finally, the Colorado Broadband Fund is specifically directed funds for ISPs to deliver last mile solutions. So it's not just that we're saying, okay, we've got the middle mile. Now it's up to you to companies and everyone else to connect to the last mile. We're going to help you do that. So that's part of the magic sauce of our funding matrix here in Colorado. Next slide, please. We couldn't do this without partnerships. These are NWCCOG's partnerships, some of them. Next slide, please. Some of Region 10's partnerships and strategies as they move forward. And this matrix of partnerships is going to continue to expand as we bring the two markets together, the very western edge of the state with the mountain central area. And we're going to be their connection back into Denver to help support them. Next slide, please. That's it. Thanks, Gary.
Well, Nate, this is really interesting. So tell me about, you have to go, where do you guys connect? Where's the major pops to the internet? Is that Denver? And do you have to get all roads go to Denver?
All roads in Colorado lead to Denver. The other possible drains for us are Cheyenne, Wyoming, and Salt Lake City, and then to our south, when we can get there, is Albuquerque, New Mexico.
So is that when you talk about resiliency, so you have those paths in place to get other, I mean, because obviously you get a few, last time I was there is some forest fires and you get a little bit of snow and some other challenges. So what's your resiliency?
Yeah, today we have a connection and our collection of interconnected networks today, we're connected to the Fort Collins Estes Park area. We connected that after the wildland fires 2 years ago. In the middle of the fire, I've got some great pictures. We had fiber splice techs putting the last of the fiber splices together to support that community. It's also supported them during snowstorms as well that have taken out their primary fiber connection. So we connect through them to Cheyenne, and Our future plans, once we get connected to Region 10, are to get to Albuquerque and also to Salt Lake City to enhance our matrix.
Yeah, no, we have our good friend Coleman Keene, who is Fort Collins. So yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me about, so you have your, in Colorado, I guess it's called Senate Bill 152, that allows communities like Fort Collins and all along the Front Range there to be able to stand up community broadband. Is that the, of your collection of ISPs that are leveraging your network, is it, what's the mix?
All of our communities in Northwest Colorado and also in Region 10, in fact, most of the state has done a local voter initiative to bypass and opt out of Senate Bill 152. One of the pieces in Senate Bill 152 that was passed in 2005 was that there was an opt-out clause if local communities supported them getting the community getting into broadband. It just had to go to the voters.
Right. So you do see all on the corridor.
That's been moved out of the way. It's actually,
right.
Frankly, Gary, it's been kind of an interesting tool for us to use because it gets the conversation started in a community.
So I got a lot. I mean, there's a ton of questions coming in. So one is, are you building local IXC traffic exchanges? And if so, how many? And are you linking them to statewide IXCs? I think that was one of your charts.
Yes, and yes to both questions. Everywhere our network lands, we have our network calls it a meet me center. The Region 10 network out on the West Slope calls it a carrier neutral location. We have locations where internet service providers can come and interconnect to us. And we also support community anchors, public safety, public service organizations as well. And yes, we do connect to multiple IXCs in Denver. Any customer that wants to connect to an IXC in Denver, it's a fiber interconnect between the networks away down in Denver for us.
Well, given your challenging environment between Loveland Pass and all the snow and the forest fires that you've had, I'm assuming that these are not aerial, but given the all the rock, how do you put this into, I mean, how are you deploying this fiber?
It's really expensive. It's very expensive to bury. And so our fiber deployments, some of them are aerial, some of them are burial. It depends even if there are poles available and if a utility company is able to give us a lease, and if the poles are capable of supporting it in a regional cost time frame and availability. So it's a both. We've had fiber outages because of woodpeckers, and we've had fiber outages because of backhoes.
And so the bulk of your right-of-ways are along roadways?
Yes, bulk of our right-of-way is along roadways. One of our partners is the Colorado Department of Transportation. Along some of our major roadways, they have fiber available for us to lease, so we can lease that dark fiber from them, and then we put it on and light it and maintain services on that ourselves, without having to have the state provide any services beyond just maintaining the fiber for us and doing break fix repair, of course.
All right, so one of the questions that came in is, what is your typical cable deployment architecture, and how do your goals impact your deployment methods?
Oh, call me. Typically, our deployment architecture is we will leverage existing resources wherever we can, because that's much more cost effective for us. And in local communities, it's a local choice. Some communities are burying fiber. Some of our communities like Breckenridge and Vale and Glenwood Springs and Steamboat Springs and Rio Blanco County are doing buried fiber. Some of them are also extending that by partnering with wireless ISPs to push out to folks who are beyond the practical reach and the affordable reach of putting fiber in the ground or up in the air.
How do organizations interact with the local governments?
We have a key contact in each community that you would reach out to. In some areas, that contact is me. In some areas, that's the IT director or a county or town manager who's managing that local access, the local access point for us.
And then how many successful, how many private ISPs are you bringing onto the network?
We currently have, between the two networks, we probably have 25 or 30 ISPs that are on the network. In the Northwest COG area with Project Thor, 3 counties, all the ISPs, wireless and wireline, except for the incumbent providers, are all utilizing our network because of the reliability of the network and the price point that we're able to provide for folks.
So can you provide some examples of the ways that local communities are supporting regional efforts to deliver broadband to the residents, educational institutions, hospitals, businesses, so forth?
Sure. In Routt County and Moffat County, which are our 2 most northern counties that we serve, there's a rural electric co-op, Yampa Valley Electric. They have a broadband initiative, Luminate, is delivering services, and they are building out fiber and taking more and more funding resources, both their own and matching grant funding, to deploy fiber to the premise. The Steamboat Springs schools actually host the Meet Me Center along with the local governments in Steamboat. And we also have a number of smaller ISPs within those communities that are also delivering services on a wireless basis to that. From the hospital perspective, in Grand County, which is nearby Routt County, they're a neighboring county, actually the local hospital district is the Meet Me Center host for those communities. And they believe that it's part of their service to the community. Since they need the broadband access, they resell their excess bandwidth to help serve ISPs in their community and improve community access overall.
Well, Steamboat brings back lots of fond memories. I think we went probably 25 years in a row, take our kids to ski every year at Steamboat. We love that place. Well, Nate, really thank you so much, for the positive impact that you're making on the communities of Colorado. And thanks for sharing your experience and insights with our audience today. Thank you everybody for joining us today. We look forward to getting back together next Wednesday. We'll be discussing the U.S. fiber surge in numbers with my good friend, Jeff Heyman from the Delaware Group. And Jeff always has excellent forecast projections for fiber to the home equipment, and he's going to quantify the current and future fiber surge. So you're not going to want to miss that. We'll see you guys next Wednesday. Thanks again, Nate.
Gary, take care, everyone.